It's Will. I've got a video on the GUI designer in RackAFX7. This is actually a video for my MMI 503 and 603 classes at the University of Miami who are studying plugins with me this semester. And the GUI designer in RackAFX7 is a little bit different from the one in previous versions. You can also see that the interface in RackAFX7 is very different here. One of the things you can do in RackAFX7 is you can assign any type of control you want to any of these knob slots. So you can have knobs, radio buttons, two-state switches, option menu, or VU meter. And I'm doing that instead of having that center strip here that had a bunch of different buttons and stuff on it. It was kind of awkward to access. The other thing is you can plant your VU meters right into the GUI here for the prototyping phase, and that makes it a lot easier than having to switch back over into this area to try to find your meter, your user meters. And like before, there are several thousand of these knobs that you can populate that scroll down in panels. And you can use these little navigation buttons here to move up and down between the separate panels in RackAFX7. Enough with that. Let's go ahead and get started on the GUI design. To demonstrate this, I've got a Tremolo plugin. This is the same plugin that I gave out in class. And it's got these 6 controls. These are going to wind up being on the GUI. So I'll go ahead and play it right now. And you can see that there are rate and depth controls and these meters that are monitoring the gain reduction. In addition to that, I have a quad phase mode that throws one of the channels into quadrature phase on the LFO. So you get that kind of thing. I also have a logarithmic mode. Now this is actually linear in dB, and when you choose logarithmic, the LFO switches from a sine wave to a triangle wave. And this gives a real like throbbing, pulsating kind of sound. It's very extreme. And if you play with the settings right, you can almost get into rotating speaker kind of simulation with that. Anyway, this is what we're going to wind up putting on the GUI. For one of these switches, and I think maybe I'll do the phase switch, I'm going to use a button. And for the other one, I'm going to use the option menu, the same control that you see right here. Now, when you create a project in RackAFX7 nowadays, you wind up with a folder hierarchy that looks like this. If you use the previous version of RackAFX, then you know that the folder you got was a giant flattened out directory full of files. That's all been compartmentalized and subdivided up right here. Part of it has to do with the fact that RackAFX projects export everything in the Aspic plugin format. And the other has to do with just trying to clean everything up and make it a cleaner project for you guys. There's a resources folder in here that contains a bunch of stock objects. These all come with each new project that you set up in RackAFX. In the backgrounds, there's a series of single and double space rack backgrounds. These are just very simple embossed backgrounds. I've also added my logo in here, an 80 by 80 pixel kind of turquoise and green logo. For the buttons, you get a series of them. This green round one is one that we did in class, so this isn't included, but the other ones are. And I think I'm going to use this little green plastic button to be the phase button. For knobs, you also get a series of knobs. I've added the aqua and the green S6 knobs in here because they match my logo. So I'm going to be using these, which are added. And then finally, there are VU meters. We have an on and off VU meter. These come stock. This is a really, really easy way to make a solid meter in VST GUI 4. So let's go ahead and get started, and I think what we'll do is we'll import the graphics and get the background going in this video, and then in the next video we'll finish up the whole thing. That should keep the videos a little bit shorter in time. So I'm going to go over to the GUI designer. In the ping tab now, there's a new paradigm, which is that you need to import all the graphics you're going to use inside of the GUI designer, with the exception of a few stock graphics that come with the stock modules in here, and we'll get to those a little bit later. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import in my pings. I'm going to choose the half space dark, half rack space dark for the background of this thing. And I also want to bring in my logo. I'll just grab that right now. I also want to bring in from these buttons this green plastic square button. I'm going to use that for the phase switch. And then for the knobs, I want to bring in the aqua and the green S6 knobs. And then the last thing that I'm going to bring in are the VU meters. So we have an on and an off graphic for that. So we'll bring in the off graphic and then come back in and bring in the on graphic. So we've got everything imported in, and we can go ahead and set up the background for this thing. I'll go ahead and do that right now. I'll go over to Objects and go to View Container. So we need a view container to hold everything. And I'm going to use the view container here, right click on it, and the size I'm going to choose is 450 by 100. The reason I'm choosing that size is that that's the exact size of the graphic that's going to fit inside of it, which is right here, half rack space dark. So there's the half rack space dark. You can see that it has an embossed edge going all the way around it that makes it kind of pop out a little bit. So there's my background, and the next thing that I want to add are the two knob groups. To do that, I'm going to use my own templates, which are right here. Now, knob group A is the old familiar one. If you've used RackAFX before, it has a blue SSL looking knob that comes with it. I'm going to go ahead and drag that row off the GUI designer and bring it up in here and plant it right there. I'm going to change this knob to something else. So let me go ahead and set up the text. This is going to be my rate knob. And I'm going to connect the knob here to the LFO rate control ID, and I'm going to change the graphic, and I'm going to make this one, let's say, the aqua color. So I'll save that, and then down here I'm going to also connect this up to the LFO rate. This is an edit control, and I think I will change the color of the text, and we'll make the text white instead of sorry about that, make the text white instead. It'll show up a little bit better, and I'll go back up here to the label and change it to white as well. So that shows up a little bit better on this background. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to grab another one of these knob groups and drag it over. We'll talk about making user templates in another video later on. And I'll go right here to the control name, and I'm going to change this one to depth. And change the color again to white to see if I can make it stand out a little bit. I'm going to change this knob. I'm going to connect it to the depth in percent. And I'm going to change the graphic to be the green knob here. So that one's depth in green, and I'll go ahead and add the control link here to the depth for that edit control and change its color to white as well. So we now have this kind of a setup for the two knob groups. So these guys are set up and ready to go. I'm going to need to add the meters and the buttons and option menus for the next thing. And I think I'm going to wait and do that in the very next video so that I can keep these a reasonable length.